A winless road trip, 2 runs in 3 games at Tropicana Field. Suddenly, Rafael Devers is like the worst player in baseball. I don't even want to look at the standings page because of how bad things are for the Giants, and they recognize that something needed to be done, and they're calling up Bryce Eldridge and Jesús Rodríguez out of pure necessity and, dare I say, desperation. Hello and welcome to Giants Baseball with Ben Kaspick. My name is Ben Kaspick, and we're going to talk about some San Francisco Giants baseball, whether you like it or not. And at this moment in time, you may not like it very much, as I definitely have not been liking it very much. Like I said, I am literally avoiding the page not even the standings page, just anything related to Giants content right now, because it is too painful to kind of dwell on this team right now. They've been unbelievably disappointing, especially on this road trip. Things were kind of feeling good and fine going out onto this road trip, but the Giants did not win a game. They got shut out 7-0 in Philadelphia in the first game, and then it was really that doubleheader where they had a lead in the 9th both games and they lost both, and then they end up getting swept in Tampa Bay. So it just ends up being disastrous for the Giants. There were 2 games earlier on in the season that they also probably should have won. And so if you go, okay, let's say they finish off both games of that doubleheader against the Phillies, and then they win those other 2 games I'm referring to, you add 4 wins, they would be 17-17. And so that just goes to show you how kind of delicate and fragile like a single moment in a baseball game can be. And then I really do think there's a snowball effect when you have a day like that doubleheader go against you. And then even a game like today where you're winning 1-0, even yesterday with the home run that Elliot Ramos hit that got taken away from him because the umpires didn't somehow see that the ball clearly was going to leave the ballpark. A lot of frustration. So we'll get to all that. But the big motivation for me coming on today is to discuss the moves that the Giants are reportedly making. So Susan Slusser, the first to report that the Giants are calling up Bryce Eldridge and Jesús Rodríguez to the Major League team, and that these guys are going to be here on Monday when the Giants take on the San Diego Padres. So, I mean, that is a huge series because they really are, if they keep playing very poorly, they could really be buried. I mean, they're already pretty buried. They're 8 back in the division, but they're also 7 back in the wild card because you've got a lot of teams that have been playing well, especially if you look at that NL Central. You've got 4 teams, all 5 teams are at least 3 games over 500. You've got 3 teams, 6 games over 500. You've got the Braves 15 games over 500 in the East. And then in the West, you've got the Dodgers doing Dodgers things. The Padres are 20-13. And so the Giants find themselves 7 games back and on a 6-game losing streak. So I'm going to get into why this move to promote Bryce Eldridge and Jesús Rodríguez is exciting, but also creates a lot of questions that we will find out the answers to. But just to kind of summarize, if you're not familiar, Bryce Eldridge was the Giants' first-round draft pick a couple of years ago, and he's not a perfect minor league player. He is 21 years old, though, and 6'7", 251, according to Fangraphs. 16th overall pick in 2023, and he's in AAA, where he played 30 games this year. He also played there in 66 games last year. And this year, in 30 games, he's hitting .333 with a .445 on base and .518 slugging. It's important to take into consideration the minor league run scoring environment. It is different, especially in the Pacific Coast League, but that is a slash line that is 58% above the average slash line for that league. And he's doing that as a 21-year-old, 21 all year until October 20th, by the way. So kind of just a freak physical specimen, and was doing well in AAA. So it's not surprising that the Giants, given, Buster Posey leading this team, understands, I think, that this type of move probably sends a message. I don't know exactly to who, and that's kind of part of the question to me, because Eldridge plays first base and DH. He doesn't play anywhere else. So when you look at the Giants right now, first base belongs to Rafael Devers, and DH has belonged to Casey Schmitt. And therein lies a significant issue for the Giants, because early on in the year, it was like, oh, Devers and Eldridge can just split time at first base and DH for the next 10, not 10, but like 8 years, when Devers' contract does run for, is it over 8 years? I'll have to look again. But man, oh man, has Rafael Devers stunk. Just been terrible. The swings have been better lately, for sure. I'm starting to have some optimism that he's going to catch fire. But when you just look at the pure baseline results, he has been the worst player in all of Major League Baseball. Let that sink in. That is not what anybody had in mind when the Giants went out and acquired him. Actually, I take that back. I was only looking at qualified players. Brian Hayes of the Cincinnati Reds has technically been, according to Fangraphs, 1/10 of a win worse than Rafael Devers, who's at -8 Fangraphs wins above replacement. That's Devers. And that was coming into today. He did have the 1 run scoring hit today. So he did strike out twice as well. So that strikeout rate is up around 30%, 30.7. It was up around 30% with the Giants last year, 29.4. Whereas this guy's career strikeout rate, even accounting for how much he's struck out with the Giants, is just 22.2%. So there's something that has just happened where he's become a strikeout machine with the Giants when that wasn't really his thing in his entire career. And he's just 29 years old. So there's not 29 until late October. Like, this is a guy who should be in his prime, but he is very much performing like someone who has no clue what he's doing at the plate. And I say like he has no clue what he's doing at the plate. Baseball is very hard. I don't want to just rag on a guy for struggling. He's trying, I'm sure, of course, and it's just not happening right now. Although, again, I am seeing some positive signs. But what do you do? That's the big question for me, is what do you do with Bryce Eldridge? Do you just bench Rafael Devers? That doesn't make any sense at all. As much as he struggled, I don't think that makes any sense at all. And nor would the Giants, I would imagine. And so, do you bench Casey Schmitt? That makes absolutely no sense at all. And let me just give you the updated numbers on Casey Schmitt. He's hitting just a cool 308 with a 354 on base and 519 slugging. His strikeout rate is under 20%. And like I said, Devers is above 30, just to give you a sense of what is average in this season right now. The Major League average strikeout rate for hitters is 22.1%. So Casey Schmitt strikes out less than the average player, and he's hit 45% better than the average Major League player this year. And there's just no way you can take his bat out of the lineup. He's hitting third, he's hitting fourth, and he deserves that 100%. He also is like miscast as a DH, although it's working because he's hitting so well. But he's a guy who's known for his defense, but he doesn't get a chance to play in the field because you've got Matt Chapman, Willy Adames, Luis Ariz, and Devers taking up the infield spots. And Casey Schmitt doesn't have any major league experience in the outfield. I'm trying to see if he has any minor league experience in the outfield. And even if you look at the outfield, I don't know where. Yeah, no, he hasn't played outfield in pro baseball at all. I don't know if he's ever played in his life in the outfield. I mean, maybe at some point in his life, but geez, okay, where do you put the guy? Where do you put Schmitt and how do you fit Schmitt and Eldridge and Devers onto the same field? I don't see the answer. The only answer I can think of is that Schmitt becomes like a guy who fills in for, maybe you give a day off to Willy Adames and you just put Schmitt at shortstop. And then the next day you give a day off to Matt Chapman or just something to that effect. But it is not a clean fit. The only quote unquote silver lining is that your contract for Luis Arraez is a 1-year deal. And so long term, there is a path in the infield of an open spot that Schmitt could hold on to. Although I think he's miscast as a second baseman because one of the best parts of his game is his arm. And so he's really best suited for third base, which is his natural and best position, in my opinion. And I don't think that's anything controversial. That's what he was drafted as. And so the issue is, this is the problem when you start handing out long-term deals to players who are getting older and if they're underperforming and they have no trade clauses, is that you really can't get away from it, even if if you suddenly find yourself in a bit of a logjam like this. So Matt Chapman, 6-year, $151 million deal, not over until after 2030. Willy Adames, 7-year, $182 million contract, not over until after 2031. Rafael Devers, it's a 10-year, $313.5 million contract. Deferrals actually make it worth less, more like $296.6 million, but the Giants picked it up. It started in 2024, so they're in 2026, but it's not over until after the 2033 season. So the one player is Luis Arraez, who is on a 1-year, $12 million deal. But the issue there is that Luis Arraez has been one of the few bright spots for the Giants. He's been, along with Schmitt, I'd have to look at FanGraphs, and this just goes to tell you I'm not always just going to rely on the numbers, but that's what I'm saying. I've been not even looking because it's been I don't want to think about the Giants. Like, this is the first time I've wanted to talk about them in a while because it's just been so grim. But the Luis Arraez, I would venture to say, has been about as valuable, if not more valuable, than Casey Schmitt in terms of leading the Giants in position player value. And so much of that has been shockingly because he's been excellent defensively. He's been kind of as advertised offensively, which is to say he's hitting for a high batting average, but not much else. He's hitting 308 on the season, which is, people say, 300 is like the mark of a great hitter. But by measure of weighted runs created plus, it's been about league average offense, which if you just watch, he gets a lot of hits, but they're almost always singles and he's not walking. But he's been so good defensively. I don't know how you take him out of the lineup because of his bat. It's much needed to just get a guy who can get on base to some degree. He's got a .333 on base percentage, which is low considering his 308 average. There's like no separation there, but it's above average because major league average is 323 in terms of on base percentage. So if we look at the Giants overall in terms of FanGraphs wins above replacement, first of all, they're second to last. The Mets are the only team, I believe, with a worse record right now than the Giants. Giants are tied, I think, with the Red Sox. I will look at the standings in a minute. But unbelievably, the Mets have been worse with their position player group. It's hard to imagine. I guess you look at guys like Schmitt and Arise, and it's like, okay, there's some positives, but the Mets lost, what was it, 12 games in a row this season? So they've really struggled, and they do have a worse record even than the Giants. But looking at the leaders for the Giants, yeah, Luis Arise is number 1 on the Giants with 1.1 Fangraphs wins above replacement. Schmitt number 2 with 0.7. Chapman third at 0.6. A lot of that for Chapman coming from defense. And Elliot Ramos 0.3. Jung-Hoo Lee 0.3. Drew Gilbert has been pretty good when he's facing a right-handed pitcher, not so much lefties. And then beyond that, you've got a bunch of guys in the negative. We'll get to Patrick Bailey. This raises a lot of questions about, is Patrick Bailey going to lose playing time to Jesús Rodríguez? So we've talked about Eldridge a little bit. I'm going to get into him more and what to expect. But we haven't talked at all about Jesús Rodríguez, who's a really interesting prospect for the Giants in that he is a catcher who also plays like second base and outfield. And they picked him up in the Camilo Doval trade. And he's a unique kind of player, really, really low strikeout rate. In the minor leagues in AAA, 9.6% strikeout rate, which is, I mean, Eldridge is striking out like 30% of the time in AAA, which is part of the concern I have, is that if you're striking out 30% of the time in AAA, normally you can add some to that when you get promoted to the major leagues. And so if you start striking out, like think about Devers, right? And it's like, man, he strikes out a lot. Well, he struck out about 30% of the time. And for Eldridge, he's been doing that in AAA. And so you put him in the major leagues, there is no guarantee that he's not going to strike out like 37% of the time or something, which is roughly what he did last year in the major leagues. It was 35%. Very small sample, just 10 games. But all of the projection systems have him striking out about 30% of the time. Granted, again, he's 21 years old. Also, what do they have to lose? But I ultimately come back to the big question, which is where and how do you fit him in without benching either Devers or Schmitt on any kind of consistent basis? Where do you fit those three into the lineup? You have to bench Chapman, Adames, Arise, or Devers to get Eldridge into the lineup. And as much as Devers has struggled, that would be insane. They're in the first, it hasn't even been a calendar year that they've had him, and they have him under contract all of 2026, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. So that's 8 years counting this year. So they need Devers to figure this out. Devers, I do believe, one of the few guys who does not have a no trade clause. They gave one to Willy Adames, I'm almost certain, and they gave one to Matt Chapman as well. And the thing about no trade clauses, I don't love them. And Farhan Zaidi, for all his failures, like just didn't give out no trade clauses. Perhaps part of the reason they didn't land some big players, although they did have an agreement with Carlos Correa. And of course, we know what happened there. But look, and it wouldn't be easy to trade any of these guys anyway, because they're all underperforming right now. Devers, possibly the one guy who could at some point be traded, but right now he's doing so poorly, there's no way. Nobody would take that contract for free. Like, not for free. I mean, like, if you just said, here's Devers, take on the money. No, I don't think there's a team out there that would do it right now for no return at all. So the Giants would have to eat some of the money. And here I am, less than one calendar year after they got him, and less than 1 month or just over 1 month into the season. I'm talking about trading this guy that was supposed to be like a seismic move for this franchise in terms of making them better and making their offense better. So it's all kind of insane and awful. And that is why I'm sitting here talking about this situation and how messy it is. So I think the simplest and cleanest, like long-term thing or outlook is to think that Casey Schmitt is probably your long-term answer at second base, or I don't know. Well, I was going to say maybe Adames moves off of short and goes to second at some point, and Schmitt at short, but Schmitt hasn't looked good when he's played short, and Adames isn't perfect, but he does do a pretty adequate job, I would say, at shortstop overall from what I've seen last year and this year. So I don't know. I mean, the perfect place for Schmitt to play would be third, but Chapman is an important piece on this team. And so anyway, all of that to say, I'll be very curious to see, not just on day one, because you could easily give somebody a day off and keep Schmitt in the lineup, get Devers, and probably give a day to Devers. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing, although his swing is finally starting to look good. So is it really the right time to give a day off to Devers? Probably not. And Devers likes to play every day. Keep in mind, he played 163 games last year because, of a quirk in the way that he played. The Red Sox had played one more game than the Giants by the time he got traded over to the Giants. And then he played every game with the Red Sox and every game with the Giants, and it added up to 163 games. So I don't think he wants a day off. So I would imagine, I hope, like if Casey Schmitt just comes out of the lineup, then this is insanity, because he's like the only guy who's really hitting and hitting consistently. He's just done it consistently all season long. So anyway, I don't know how long-term this season, I'm talking a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, 1 month, if Eldridge does well and Devers does well, like it is hard to figure how they do this without having to trade somebody. And it's hard to trade the guys they have because they either have no trade clauses, or they're not performing, or both, or they are performing and you don't want to trade them. So that's the situation the Giants find themselves in, unless somebody starts playing outfield. But then who comes out?